So then, trees, grass and dishwashers. What on earth could these three things have in common? Well, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're going to find out. Hi, I'm Rob Poyton. Thanks for joining me today. And let's start with the most unusual one first. Dishwashers. Because we can all think what trees and grass are about in relation to gaming. Obviously, we're looking at some terrain. But here's the thing. I find that when you're a gamer, you tend to look at things with a bit of a different eye. And we had a very exciting event last week at the Dragon's Lair. We took delivery of a new dishwasher. Yes, I'm now at that age where the arrival of a new household appliance is a cause of major excitement. Anyway, we got rid of the old one that was taken away. But before it was taken away, I was having a look at one or two bits of it with my gaming eye. And I thought, I could probably use this. And the part I was looking at is, now I don't know the technical term, but it's the bit that you put all your cutlery in, your knives and forks. The whole thing's only going to the dump anyway, so I thought I'm going to rescue this. And as you can see, I've put all my brushes in there, plus some scissors, tweezers, my dry brushes and a couple of other bits and pieces. The only thing I've had to do is put some card, tape some card on the bottom because the holes go all the way through. And I found at first when I put the brushes in, I picked it up and a lot of them fell out the bottom. So that aside, I now have a ready-made brush and tool caddy. So there you go, all in the name of recycling. Nothing goes to waste when you're a gamer. Speaking of which, when the new dishwasher arrived, we unpacked it. So I've got loads of lovely packing now and more sort of styrofoam than I know what to do with. But the thing was sitting on this base. So a square base, quite thick. I'll show you a picture of it just here. And it was actually my wife who said, that could be used as a sort of space base or something for one of your games. So I looked at it and I thought, she's right. She usually is, to be fair. But I personally didn't have a use for it. And I put it up on the Bedford Gladiators WhatsApp group. And it was actually Robin at Hobby Hive who said, oh, that's just what I need, just the thing. So I popped that down to him a few days ago. So there you go. As I say, when you start looking at things with a gamer's eye, nothing is wasted. Everything has some use for our hobby. All right, so that's the household appliances dealt with. Let's move on now to our grass and trees. And obviously this refers to our gaming terrain. As you may know, recently I've been building a lot of 10mm terrain for our Fantastic Battles campaign. A big part of that has been making forests. So I've been using vinyl tiles and then putting the scatter grass on top. And what I've been doing with my grass is keeping it in a jar like this. Then when I want to use it, I either tip it out into a margarine tub to dip my stuff in, or I take it out with fingers and sprinkle it across. And using both of those methods, particularly using the fingers and scattering, I found that this stuff clumps together quite a bit, which I'm sure it comes as no real surprise to those of you who know, as I recently found out, this stuff is made from nylon and it's meant to be applied with one of those static applicators. So I had a look round and I thought there must be a solution to this. Where was the first place I looked? Yes, of course, it was the B&M store. Yes, I've been shopping in B&M again, and I happened to find these food boxes, a set of 4 for £2.50. I thought, well, for that price, you can't go wrong, and these could give me the answer to my clumping problem. So that's the size of the box that I got. There are larger ones available. These were £3 for 2. Much larger. I guess they're at least twice the capacity of those ones, but I'm sure these will be big enough. So now I'm going to take my scatter out of the jar and I'm going to place it in the food container, or Tupperware as they're known. I guess Tupperware is a proprietary brand, right? So straight away what happens is, of course, my scatter thins out a lot more, and if I put the lid on and just give that a bit of a shake, I'm not going to shake too much here now, then that settles out a lot more, and already those clumps are starting to break up. Now what this also means is, as well as storing, they're nice and dry and safe, when I come to do my next lot of scatter, rather than have to decant from jar into margarine tub and back again or whatever, I just take the lid off, I glue whatever it is I want the flock to stick to, and I dip it in. So there's a lot less handling. I'm certainly not using my fingers with it. I guess there's a static charge in the fingers, right? So I think that's going to be a lot more efficient for my grass. And there we go, I've got a nice airtight seal, and I can see what's inside already. Of course I can label these easily enough as well. And the other thing is they stack, so effectively they're going to take up less room. At the moment I've got probably about 15 jars or so on the shelf there of this kind of thing, so that's going to be a much better storage solution. So that's my scatter material, that's my grass taken care of. Let's now move on to trees. On that big upload I recently did with the 10mm terrain, you'll have seen me make some 10mm trees, and I was talking about that idea of a forest, about how in a game you can have this wonderful forest laid out, but if you want to move any figures through it, it becomes a real pain. So I came up with the idea of the forest base, the vinyl tiles, and then making the trees by basing them on pennies. And I used some sort of polyfiller type stuff, put that on the penny, stuck the tree on top, waited for it to dry, and then put the grass flock around the edge, with the idea being that I can have several of these sat on the base. Then if I want to move the figures in, it's easy to move the trees aside. And a good thing with this scale, they're on pennies, the trees aren't that tall, so they're very secure. You know, 28mm scale, the trees are very prone to fall over unless you have a huge base. However, I did have a bit of an issue with that. I don't know if you can see on these there, the trees are a little bit wonky. Obviously there's a strong wind, and this is because the stuff I use, the sort of cork, the polyfiller stuff, takes quite a while to dry. And obviously when I push the trees in, I found I had to trim the base right down. If the base was or the trunk was a little bit longer, they leaned even more. So I was pushing these in, and because the stuff is quite wet still, I'm getting that lean. They've dried hard now, so they're not going to lean anymore, but nonetheless that was a little bit of an issue. Now a few years back I did try my hand at doing some sculpting, and that used a type of modelling clay. It was a two-part clay, possibly called Sculpt or Magic Sculpt, can't quite remember now. And I thought perhaps something like that would be better to base these trees in, because it's like a putty, it's a clay, it's much harder, so I can put the base on, stick the tree in, press it in around a bit, and it's likely going to hold. Now I didn't want to, you know, lay out a lot on sort of expensive Magic Sculpt or anything like that, so I had a look around and I found this. This is air drying clay. This is a kids thing, and it's for kids to make sort of animals. There's all sorts of ideas in here, and they're all really brightly coloured. You get loads of these little pots in all sorts of colours. There's about 3 shades of fluorescent pink, there's oranges, there's browns, and there's also what is great for our purposes, some greens as well. Now they are a little bit bright and lurid, but you know, once the flock is on, that's all going to be covered up. For my trees I've used my same source as last time, which is a Chinese company I found on Amazon, and you get bags. I think there's 20 or so trees in there for like a £5, so quite cheap. I'm not going to take all these out now because they do shed, so just be aware of that. And of course once I've got them all based and flocked, I can put a little more flock onto the trees themselves and then put the sealant on to keep everything in place. Also again, I've got a lot of trunk on these, so I'm probably going to end up trimming some of these down a little bit. There's 2 issues there. One is the aesthetic of it. I mean, you want the trees to look tree size, compared to your figures. But also I have to think about carrying these around as well, and storage. So the last lot that I did, I put into one of my trays, also from B&M. I really must press for a sponsorship deal. But where something has gone on top of that, you see a lot of these trees are really bending again. So I think I'm going to have to redo some of these. They didn't survive that first transport very well. But anyway, you know, this is how we learn about things. As they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So anyway, let's get on with that. Let's get some pennies out. Let's get the clay out, and let's get basing some trees. Here's the modelling clay user manual then, age 3+. So hopefully I will be able to understand this. And it just gives the instructions on how to use it. Basically, you can roll it, press it, and then cut it. Keep it sealed. If the clay becomes hard, add a small amount of water and rub it evenly to keep it soft. So hopefully this will keep for quite a while as well. And I've already seen, of course, looking through this, there's lots of ideas of little models that kids can make. But being the Lovecraftian that I am, oh look, tentacles and an octopus. Maybe I'll even look at using this to sculpt some little figures or something. We shall see. Anyway, today we're looking at trees. So I've got a selection of coins. Now, I have run out of pennies. I think I used most of my pennies last time. I've just got a few left. I found some foreign coins, 10 cents. I'm not sure where that is from, possibly Canada. So I thought I might have to upgrade to 20p's because they're about the right size and they've got that nice hexagonal base. They'll fit together nicely. Anyway, that's inflation for you. What I'm going to do is, what have I got here? 5 pennies. I'll just start with these 5 and we'll see how things go. If they work out all right, then of course I'll do the rest. I've got about 40 trees here to work through. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just trim the trunks of these trees a little, just to cut down the height a touch. So I'll get those done first, then we'll look at getting the clay onto the pennies. Alright, that's my trunks trimmed, and these ones aren't quite as sheddy as the first lot of trees I got. Perhaps they're a different manufacturer, perhaps they've just been made a little better, but most of that is staying on, so that's good. Right, so let's open the clay. I'm going to go for the brown, as I figure that's a nice earthy neutral colour. And there we are. So this is quite firm already. I don't know if you can see that. It's much firmer than using the polyfiller. So let's get a little scoop out here. It's almost like a very thick chocolate mousse. So I'm not tempted to try and eat it. And let's just roll some of that together. Put it on our penny. And already this feels a lot firmer. I'm just going to build that up a touch more, just to give us enough height for our trunk to sit into. This works very easily. I'm not even having to sort of dampen my fingers or anything. So it's like a little volcano. I want that nice and high in the middle. And then we'll put the trunk into that, press down, and that already seems quite firm. That's nice and straight. So we'll just press in a little around the edges, just to make sure that's right up against the trunk. Then I'll put that to one side. Okay, second one. So let's try exactly the same thing. Again, just build up my central cone a little bit, and we'll pop the tree in there. And once again, there we go. Just a little press around. So yeah, this is much firmer than polyfiller. I'm not having to wait for anything to harden before I work with it, and even at this stage it's supporting the tree in the upright position. So let's get the rest of these done. Alright, so as you can see, I've got 6 trees done. I found another penny, and look, they've only been done a few minutes ago, but they're already firm enough I can pick them up by the trees with no issues. So I'm going to leave these to dry overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and see how they're looking. Alright, so next morning these have been left overnight to harden, and as you can see they've done so, and our trees remain nice and upright, so that's worked well. And I just took the opportunity while I had the clay out to repair some of those trees that I did before that were leaning. Just put a bit of clay on those bases to straighten them up, so I need to reflock those as well. That's today's job then. A bit of PVA glue, and I'm going to just coat these bases and those ones I repaired, and then get dipping. And once that's done, I shall just dip into my grass there. Still getting a little bit of clump in there. The problem I have with this shed is, especially with the weather at the moment, it's raining again today, it does get quite damp in here. I have a little heater going on overnight, but it does take a while to dry out. That's probably not helping with issues like this, and also drying times for various things. But there we go. So I've got a straight tree and I've got a reasonably grassy base. So I'm going to get on and do the rest of these now, and then I'll show you everything once it's finished. And there's the finished trees. All I have to do with these now is spray some fixative on, probably some hairspray or something like that, and they're ready for the table. Alright, so there we go. Yes, I'm happy to say that that clay worked much better than the filler type stuff. Much firmer. I could put the trees in, squidge the clay around the base to hold it, and then just leave those to dry. Much less mess, no water involved, and then of course putting the flock on the bases, dipping into the new tubs like that. That worked very nicely as well. So overall we'll count that as a success. That's the way I'm going to do my trees from now on, certainly in 10mm, and I'm going to see if I can use those clays for some other things as well. I generally have been using the polyfiller type stuff, but it can get very messy. I think perhaps for larger scales, so 28mm, like when I come to do my fantasy skirmish table pieces, which are going to be about a foot square, then I think maybe the polyfiller is good for covering a whole surface, you know. But for smaller things, especially if I'm setting in terrain pieces like gravestones or that sort of thing, this air dry clay may be the way to go. So thanks again for joining me today. I'd be very interested to hear any of your stories about household appliances, their packaging, or any other odd or strange bits or pieces that you found useful for your gaming. I think, as I say, with a bit of imagination, you can look around and you can find a use for pretty much anything. But I hope this doesn't start a trend of gamers sabotaging the dishwashers just to get hold of these bits and pieces. As always, if you haven't already, please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.